Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am so sorry that I didn't realize that I got disconnected in the previous lecture. Okay, so I just straight away continue our explanation or our discussion here. Now let me continue. Okay, now we want to calculate the net present value, right? The net present value using the discount factor of 4%, and we must make sure that the discount factor 4% here will give us a positive NPV. Why is that? Because the first discount factor has given us a negative NPV. So now, right, and then you get this um, all the what is it, the amounts of interest payment, okay, to the bond holders or debt holders here, 50 ringgit, and then we multiply by the present value annuity, okay, at 4% for 10 years, okay, 8.1109, and you multiply, you get this figure. Okay, and then at the end of the maturity date, we knew already that the debt holders will receive the par value of 1,000 ringgit. And again, we need to multiply this with the present value interest factor in year 10 at 4%. Okay, then you get 6,775 and 60 cents. So you plus these to the future income that will be received by the debt holders or bond holders here. Okay, and then you minus with the cost or the price of the bond here paid by the investors. So this is the amounts that the bondholders pay to the company. But the company will receive the net price, right? And that's why we minus the price of the bond, okay, with the flotation cost. So that's why the value will be equal to 1045. Right? Then you plus and minus these two value, then you get the net present value here of positive value. Okay, right. So now you get the positive NPV, and then another one is negative NPV. So this will be our C, and this will be our B. Right, we have A, B, C, and D. Then we plug in these figures into this formula. Okay, then we let us include into the formula. Okay, so the KD before tax, we are calculating the cost of tax before tax here. Right, the A is 4%, right, and you plus with the C. What is C? C is for positive MPV, 36.14, right, and you divide by the C, 36.14 minus, and don't forget the negative sign for the negative MPV, 45 cent, right, and then multiply by B, which is 5%, you minus 4%. Okay, then you get the cost of tax before tax of 4.44%. Okay, right. If you notice here in this answer, that one, this one should be on this side, and the other one is should be on this side. But then it's just the same as this figure will become as a positive value, right? Negative, negative, then it will be positive. So it's just a small matter here. Right, then this is the KD before tax, right? So KD before tax equals to 4.44. So let me show. Okay, the cost of debts before tax as calculated equals to 4.44%. Now we need to determine or calculate the cost of debts after tax. Why? Because the interest normally paid before tax, right? So that's why we need to minus tax. Okay, 4.44 here, that is the formula actually cost of debt before tax multiply 1 minus TC, tax rate. Okay, so what is the TC? Let's say the tax rate given is 25%. So the company has to pay corporate tax of 25%. So therefore, the cost of debt for this company, if the company issue redeemable bond, 4.44% multiplied by 1 minus 0.25. So that means after tax cost of debt becomes the 3.33%. Okay, so that is how you calculate the redeemable bond. Okay, let's go to another slide. Okay, this is for irredeemable bond. Okay, irredeemable bond, that means, oh, let me rub this one first before I explain to you, okay, how to calculate the cost of debts if for the irredeemable bond. Okay, bond. Okay, now for the first example, right? So how do we know that the bonds issued by this company is a redeemable bond or redeemable bond or debts? So there must be a keyword. If it's a redeemable debt, alright, or redeemable bond, that means the question will mention about the maturity period. But here, the example or the question here only mention about perpetuity. It does not mention about the redeemable or the maturity period. Okay, right. Okay, so the keyword here is the perpetuity. Sometimes it is used using the indefinitely or infinity. Right. So we know the definitions of irredeemable debts already, right? So this is the types of debts that do not have maturity period. Okay, does not have maturity period. That means the company will pay the interest, in this case the interest of 9% to the debt holders indefinitely or infinity. And the debt holders will hold this bond or this debt indefinitely for indefinite period. We do not know for how long this bond is going to be, okay, to be held by the debt holders. Right, so it's going to be infinity. Okay, so here how are we going to calculate the cost of debts for the irredeemable debts? So the formula is very simple. So this is the formula here, which is the interest amount, okay, annual interest amount, you divide by the net price. Alright, net price of the debts. Okay, how to calculate here? Right, same as the net price we calculate when we determining the cost of equity for cost of equity, right? So here also that means the formula will be price of the debts or bond minus the flotation. So that is how we get the net price. Okay, so now since in this example the company is not incurring any flotation cost, that means it's more straightforward here, which is right interest. Already knew that or mentioned already to you. The interest must be based on the nominal value or par value. Okay, so the par value of this debt is 100 ringgit. Okay, so that means the interest amount will be 9% multiplied by 100 ringgit, which is 9 ringgit. So this is the interest that's going to be paid by the company to the shareholders for infinity. Okay, so 9 ringgit you divide by what is the denominator, net price. So since we don't have any flotation cost, straight away we take the price of the debts, which is 90 ringgit. That's all. So therefore you get 10% or 0.1, okay, as a cost of debts. Okay, right. And then what about irredeemable debt? Okay, so irredeemable debt here is here there is a flotation cost. Okay, now it's stated that right the company or Owen has issued 10% loan note. So this is the interest rate. Alright, and the nominal value of this loan is 100. The market price of the loan notes here is 90 ringgit. Okay, so this is the short term. Okay, flotation cost is 5 ringgit. Okay, calculate the cost of this capital if the debenture here or if this loan note is irredeemable. Okay, alright. Next, So how are we going to determine the cost of debts? Okay, so KD, okay, equals to interest amount 10%, and you multiply by the nominal or par value, which is 100 ringgit, and you divide by the net price. The net price is the price of the loan notes here is 90 ringgit, and you should minus the quotation cost of 5 ringgit. So therefore, 10% of 100 is 10 ringgit divided by 85 ringgit, right? So that means you will get 0.1176 or 11.76%. Okay? So that is how you calculate the cost of debt for irredeemable debts. Okay? So the rule here is you need to identify first whether the debt issued by the company is irredeemable or redeemable. Then you can choose the right formula for calculating the cost of debt. Right? Whether to use the redeemable debt formula or the irredeemable debt formula. Okay. Right. The next one is the weighted average cost of capital. So, like I said earlier or mentioned in the previous lecture, some company prefer to combine the debt and the equity, right? To combine the debt and equity to finance the company's project or to finance the businesses. Okay. Okay, now it involves steps here. I have mentioned the steps here already in the first lecture. Okay, right. So what are the steps? You can see again on this slide. Okay, you need to determine the cost of debts after tax cost of debts. Here, you need to determine after tax cost of debts. Sorry, cost of capital. After tax cost of capital. Okay, if it's cost of debt, that means you have to find out cost of debt after tax. Okay, right. So cost of capital here we already covered. Okay, which is KE, right? If it's relates to the issuance of the stock, then KNE, right? If it's cost of debt, KD, and KD, it depends on whether the debt is irredeemable or redeemable. Okay, right. And then the second step is you need to determine the weightage of the debts, weightage of the preferred stock and weightage of the common stock to be used in the financings of future investment. That is the weightage of financing. So the weightage of financing is the percentage of the value of the capital contributed by each component over the total capital requirement. Okay, later on we will do the example. And then after that we can proceed to calculate the WACC. Okay, so for the first one here, this is the cost of capital depending whether it's KE or KNE or KD, right? Or KP if we have for preferred stock. Okay, and then once we get this value, then we proceed with the weightage of financing. In short form, we put as WOF. So then you determine the WOF for, right? WOF for equity, right? Common equity for preferred stock, okay, and also for the debts. How many percent for each component over the total requirement. Okay, and then you have this WOF for each components of the capital, and then you have the cost of capital, then you multiply these two, then you total up the value, then you will get the WACC. Okay, you total up these two, multiply first, okay, and then total up, then you get the WACC. Okay, let's look at the formula or the example. How to determine the WOF first. Okay, how to determine the WOF first? So, look at this first situation. The precinct Sdn Berhad has secured construction project located at Kota Iskandar Nusajaya recently. At present, the optimal capital structure of this Rusin Sinjang Berhad is given as follows. Right, this company rely on common equity, rely on preference shares, and also rely on debts. So it's a combination of the capital components to finance the activities of the precinct senior Berhad. But then how many percent of each component here contribute to the capital, right, of the company. So you can see here for common equity, right, WOF, that is the weightage of financing. Okay, weightage of financing. Okay, in short form WOF. So 70% of the total capital that this company have is financed by common equity, right? And then 20% of this total capital is financed by preference shares. And 10% of this total capital of the company is financed by debts or contributed by debts. Okay? Right. And then total here would be 100%. So this is what we meant by WOF, the weightage of financing. Right. Okay, let's go to another example for Niki Berhad here. Right, for Nike Berhad, the extract capital structure of Nike for the year 2018 is given as follows. Okay, right. So you are given that the total capital of this Nike Berhad 100 million ringgit. Okay, and out of 100 million ringgit, okay, 500,000 ringgit is contributed by bonds or debts, and then 14,500 thousand ringgit is contributed by preference shares, right? And then common stock, that is ordinary shares, right? Contribute 55,000 million 700,000 ringgit, and the retained earning internal fund of this company only contribute 9.3 million ringgit. Okay, so this is the value of the capital, right, contributed by each component. Okay, contributed by each components of financing. So what are the component of the financing of this company? It is bond, preferred stock, common stocks, and retained. Okay, the total is 100,000. Next, we need to determine what is WOF. What is WOF all about? It is the weightage of financing. So 20.5 million ringgit, you divide by the total capital here of 100 million, multiplied by 100%, then the weightage of financing is 20.5%. Okay, then for the preferred stock, okay, it's 14.500, you divide by total capital 100 million, then the percentage or the weightage of the financing comes or contributed by the preference shares is 14.5%. And out of 100 million, okay, 65% is actually contributed by the common equity and common stock and retained earnings. So these two things we combine, we call it as a common equity. Okay, which is the retained earning plus the ordinary share. Okay, value of retained earning plus value of ordinary share or common stock. Okay, plus these two, 55.7 million plus 9.3 million, and then divided by 100 million here. Then out of this 100 million, right, 65% is actually contributed by these two components. Okay, right. So that is the WEF. Okay, now we go to the next step, right? So once we know this weightage, right, and then we go to the next step, that is the cost of capital. The cost of capital, like I said, we have the formula to calculate for each components of cost of capital. If we are calculating for preference shares cost of capital, that means it's a K2. If it's a cost of debts, that means we are calculating KD. If it's for internal or common stock, that means it's a KE. Okay, common stock, KE or KNE. So when the KNE is calculated, when the company issue additional shares. In other words, when the company rely on the external financing from the issuance of the ordinary share, then the company needs to calculate KNE. If the company rely on the retained earnings only, okay, that means the company need to calculate the cost of capital of KE. So that's the difference between KE and KN. Okay, right. So let's say we have calculated the cost of capital except for the KD in this case, right? Let's say here it's given here to calculate KD, right? Sorry, this is for WOF. Okay, the calculations of WOF. Okay, okay. So for cost of capital, this one we based on the example that we have done before in the previous lecture. Okay. Next, we go to the example. Okay. Right. So this example, example one. Let's say we have calculated the cost of capital, and this COC here that we have obtained or shown in the table here is actually obtained from the previous example. For example here, cost of common equity, that is 15.2% here, 15.20. This one you can refer to slide 16, right? And then if it's a preference shares, you can refer to slide 20. Okay, this one you can refer to, I don't know. Okay, let me show here. Okay, so for 15.20, we get this figure right from the example on slide 16. Right, and then for preference shares, we get this figure for the from the slide number is slide number 20. Okay, and then for cost of debts 4.43, here we go to example 1, example of the redeemable debts, which is on slide 27. Okay, slide 27. Okay, so this is the cost of capital that we have calculated before. And then WOF here, the weightage of financing here, we based on the first example in the case of Priscin Sdn Bhd just now on the previous slide here, which is this one. Okay, we use this weightage of financing 70, 20, and 10. Okay, that means we have this info, which is this one is step 3 and this one is step 1, right? Okay, okay, right. So once we have this, then we multiply this, then we get the last column. So 70% times this value, which is 15.5, right? Okay, sorry, 15.2. Okay, right? 15.2%, then you get 10.64. Then weightage of financing here, we get 20%, then times COC for the preference shares. Okay, then you get 3.14. Right, for debts, okay, cost of debts 4.43%, and then the weightage of financing is 10%, then you multiply, you get 0.443. Okay, right, then you total up these three things here, then you get the total of 14.223%. So this is what we call WACC. Okay, so that means the company that combine, okay, that mix the components of financings in running the business. So that means the company must calculate the cost of capital, that so-called as weighted average cost of capital, WACC. Okay, right. For example, two, let's say all figures is mostly given, right? Except for KP. For KP, that is the cost of capital for preference shares. This one you can refer to slide 20 just now as the previous one. So here you can refer to slide 20. Okay, and then you multiply this 3.95 with the weightage of financing. Okay, so this one based on the second example on the previous slide, which is this one. Okay, we make use of this WOF 20.5, 14.5, and 65. Okay, and then multiply these two variable. Okay, you multiply, then you get this one. The last column, then you total up, you get 10.667%. Okay, so make sure the cost of capital here is after tax cost of capital. Then you multiply total up and again you get the WACC. So that is how we determine the weighted average cost of capital when the company combine the different components of financing. Okay, in what is it, in raising funds for the uh, business. Okay, right. We go to marginal cost of capital. Okay, marginal cost of capital. Okay, normally, right, the company will use up all its internal fund first. Okay, normally the company will use up all the internal fund or available internal fund. And then let's say, right, there is a point of time that the company may have problem that where the company has insufficient fund. That means the fund or the capital that they have internally is not enough to finance the new project. Alright, so if that happen, that means the company has to think about raising fund, alright, by issuing additional equity or by issuing new equity to the public or to the market. Right, so that they will get the additional funds which is required for the new project. So therefore, if this happen, right, if the company issue the additional fund to finance the new additional equity, in other words, okay, if the company has to issue additional equity or if the company has insufficient, not enough internal funds to finance the new project, therefore, right, the weighted average cost of capital will be changed to weighted marginal cost of capital, WMCC. Okay, if the company has enough, right, enough internal fund, okay, right, that comes from preference shares, right, retained earning, common stock, okay, or debts. Okay, that the existing fund is enough, okay, to finance the new project, then, right, the company do not have to calculate WMCs. See, the company will calculate or determine the weighted average cost of capital. But there is a point of time where the company might have insufficient fund. Okay, insufficient internal fund. Okay, so therefore the company needs to issue, okay, additional um, equity or needs to issue new stock so that they can get the additional fund required for the new project. So if that is the case, the company has to calculate weighted average marginal, sorry, the weighted marginal cost of capital. Okay, the weighted marginal cost of capital, WMCC. So WACC will change to WMCC. Okay, right. Here on the next slide, you can see that here, okay, before we determine whether we need to issue additional stocks or whether we need to issue new stock or not, then we need to determine first the maximum capital expenditure. Okay, the maximum capital expenditure. So what is the formula that we need to determine the maximum capital expenditure? So this is the formula, right? You will divide the retained earnings of the company, right, that is available for the new project, divide by the weightage of the financing relating to the particular component here, which is common equity. Okay, the equity component lah, in other words. Okay, so once we have calculated the maximum capital expenditure, then we will compare that amount to the initial cost of the new project. Is it enough or not? So if it's not enough, then that is when the company will make the decision to issue the new stocks. Okay, so that is where the company needs to calculate the cost of capital for the WMCC, okay, not WACC. Okay, right. So let us have a look at this example. Okay, right. Let's say now we want to determine first whether the company need to issue new stock or not. Okay, let us read first. Okay, currently, Precinct has 6.5 million retained earnings that can be used to finance the profitable project. So this is the retained earnings available or allocated for the new project. So the company has to utilize the retained earning before any new ordinary shares can be issued. So that is what I meant just now. Okay, the company needs to make sure whether the amounts of the retained earnings available here is enough or not to finance the new projects. Okay. The capital structure represents 70%, right? The capital structure shows here, right? 70% equity financing. That means, right, the weightage of financing, okay, that comes from or contributed, right, contributed by equity is 70%. The rest is by other components such as preference shares, okay, debts, right? Okay, now if the construction project worth 15 million, so this is actually the initial cost, right? The initial cost of the new project or investment. Okay, right, 15 million. Determine the weighted marginal cost of capital, right? So look at the answer. Okay, how are we going to deal with this situation? Okay, maximum amounts of internal fund, right? This is the maximum amount, the available retained earning, not the maximum, the available retained earning for the new project, so which is 6.5 million here. Okay, in order to determine the maximum amounts of internal fund, okay, the formula here is what? Retained earning divided by the weightage of financing financed by equity, 70%. Okay, therefore, this is the maximum internal fund for capital expenditure, right? Or this is also known as the maximum capital expenditure, use internal fund or retained earning. Okay, right. Value 9.8285714 million. So this is the maximum capital expenditure. It to be used um, from the internal fund. Okay, now we compare this amount to the cost of the new project, which is 15 million ringgit. So this maximum amounts of internal fund is not enough to cover the cost of the new project. So this is the point where the company will issue new shares to get the fund. Okay. Right. So if this is the situation where it requires or demands the company to issue new shares to finance the new project, that means, right, we need to use cost of capital for equity, right, which is the K and E, right? Okay. Okay. So this KNE is calculated or is used in the calculations of weighted average cost of capital or WMCC in this case, right? Because the company needs to issue new shares. So this one is already calculated. Okay, we use the example that we have done before, and we can refer to slide number 18. Right, here you can refer to slide 18. Okay, slide number 18, right, which is giving you the K and E. So we use K and E instead of KE. If we are not issuing new shares, we will use KE. But here in this case, we need to issue new shares, right? Because we don't have enough fund, right? So therefore, we will use K and E. So take the COC from this slide, that is 16%. Okay, and this is WOF just now, given in the question, weightage of the financing. Okay, 70% that contributed by the common equity. Right, and then preference shares given, right, on slide 20. Okay, so this is obtained from slide 20, same as before. And then this one, 4.43, the cost of capital for debts from slide 27. Okay, right, you get this figure, all this figure K and E. Remember, we are using K and E, not K. Why is that? Because we have, or the company has to issue the new shares. Okay, right, so we have these three and then we multiply by the WOF of each component. Then you get this figure, right? You total out these three and then you get the weightage marginal cost of capital, WMCC. It is no longer WACC, okay? It is called as WMCC. Why is that? Because the company issue new shares to finance the new project. Okay. Right. So this is the comprehensive example class. I think I will explain to you, or you need to go through first the example here, and later on I will discuss with you in the next class. Okay? Okay, as a summary, okay, I want to show you the summary of our topic here. Okay, from the first video to the third video. Okay, so what we did so far is about the calculations of cost of capital. So we know that cost of capital is about the financing. Okay, financing the uh, business, that is it involved with the financing decision. Okay, right. If the company is financed solely or entirely, the company is financed, company's business, right, or company's project is financed entirely by equity, right? That means the company will need to calculate the cost of equity. And the cost of equity can be the internal cost of equity and cost of equity, and it can be the external external costs of equity, right? And then if the company's project or activities is financed solely by debts, no equity at all, that means the company will need to calculate the cost of debts, right? Okay. For cost of debts, right, it depends on the types of debts issued by the company. Whether the company issue the irredeemable debts or redeemable debts. Okay, right. The cost of debt, the symbol would be KT. But for cost of equity, it depends. If it's internal cost of equity, there is no issuance of the new shares and no flotation cost. That means we will use KE. Right? And for external cost of equity, that means it will be K and E because it involves here the issuance of shares and it involves the flotation cost here. Right? And the cost of D here calculated must be after tax. Right? The cost of debts must be cost of debts after tax. Right? Okay, somehow we do have companies that combine the equity, right, and also with debt. The equity include the preference shares, okay, and also retain. And debts include what? It's either irredeemable or redeemable. So if the company combines these components of financing, that means the company needs to calculate the weighted average cost of capital. Okay, to calculate the weighted average cost of capital, this is actually the summations of the WOF, the weightage of financing, multiply with the cost of capital of each component. Okay, if it's involved the issuance of new shares or new stock, where the company may not have enough retained earnings to finance the new project, right? So the company will issue new shares, right? That means the company will calculate the weighted marginal cost of capital. Okay, again, it's a summations of the weightage of financing multiplied by the cost of capital of each financing component. Okay, except that for WMCC, we will use for equity, we will use K and E. For WACC, we'll use KE for the component of common equity. Okay, if it's issuing the shares, that means the components of common equity, we will use the K and E. Other than that, the preference, the equity here, we also, or the company may issue a preference shares or preferred stocks. Okay, so again, issuing the preference shares also will involve flotation cost. So this is the general idea of the cost of capital. Okay, as a whole. Now we summarize to the next part that relates to the formula. Okay, right. The cost of capital here for equity, right? Equity, right? Whether it's an internal retained earning, right, or external equity, okay, or preference shares. Okay, so if it's internal common equity, the cost of equity will be calculated as what? Using the dividend growth model, right? We have to formula, right? Using dividend growth model, that is where the cost of equity equals to D1 divided by P0 plus G. Okay, right. If it's involving the issuance of shares, right, again, we're still using the dividend growth model, but the calculation and the symbol will be KNE equals to D1 divided by net price of the stocks plus G. Why we are using net price? Because we need to minus the current price, okay, of the stocks, okay, with the flotation cost, okay, because it involves the issuance of new shares. The same thing here for preference shares. The symbol here is KP. That is D only divided by NPO. Why there is no G here? Because we know one of the features of the preference share is the company is paying fixed dividend. So there is no growth in dividend amount, right? So that means there will be no G. Okay, when it comes to the debt, okay, the cost of debt will be the KD, cost of debt, huh? Right. So it depends on the types of debts, whether it's irredeemable, like I said just now, and redeemable. If it's redeemable, what is it? We need to use the interpolation formula, subjects to trial and error. Okay, interpolation formula will be A, the KD, will be A plus C over C minus D times B minus A. Right. So what A, B, C, and D? Please refer to the slides or your notes. For irredeemable, that means the debt that has no maturity period, okay, where the debts will be held or held by the debt holders indefinitely period for indefinite period. Alright, so therefore here in this case the KD will be the interest amount just divided by um, the net price. Okay, if there is no flotation cost, no need to minus the flotation cost. But here you must bear in your mind, since the interest is paid before tax, therefore we need to calculate the cost of debts after tax. How is it? Equals to, okay, KD before tax, right, multiplied by 1 minus corporate tax rate. Okay, so that is equity and debt. Okay, another situation is that, as mentioned earlier, many company will combine the financing component. Okay, combine the financing component where what? It combines debt and equity. Right, so there will be two formula that are WACC, another one WNCC. So when will the WNCC use? Okay, be used in the calculations of the cost of capital. This is occurring when the company has to issue an additional, okay, an additional shares, okay, or stock, right? And then here, no issuance of new stock. Okay, this one, issue an additional shares or new shares, okay, or new stock. Right, so how to calculate the WACC and WNCC? Okay, that is WOF, total of weightage of financing of each component multiplied by the cost of capital of each component. Alright, so for example, right, WACC equals to weightage of financing in equity, common equity, right? This one include retained earning plus stock, okay, multiply with the KE, okay, and then plus weightage of financing of debts, okay, and multiply by KD, right? And plus what? The weightage of financings in preference shares or stock, preference stock or preferred stock, and multiply by the KP. When you total up these three, then you are going to write WACC. Okay, but here, when it involves the issuance of additional or new shares, that means what? It will be equals to the weightage of financing in common equity, right? Weightage of financings of the common equity, that is the retained earning plus the issuance of new stock, okay? Okay, and multiply by, what is it? Let me change the color here so that you can remember. So, K and E. Okay, right, and then go back to the red color, plus, what is it? Weightage of financing in debt, multiply by KD after tax. Okay, and then plus weightage of financings in preference shares or preferred stock, multiply by the cost of capital of the preferred stock. Then you will get WMCC. Okay, so this is the formula that will be used for the combinations of debts and equity financing in the company. Right? So I guess that's all for now. Okay, it's enough for now. Then in the next class, we will go through the comprehensive example and we will discuss together. But then you must see the videos first and then go through the questions of the comprehensive example. Okay, because it's quite long for the comprehensive example question here. Okay, with that, thank you. Assalamualaikum.